Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. I think it's safe to say that all of you are here today because you are opposed to government censorship. Is that right? Have I got that broadly correct? Okay, we can agree on that much. Book banning is a form of government censorship. Is that, broadly speaking, correct? Professor Knox, you're an expert in this. Let me just ask you. Book banning is a problem under the First Amendment because it's the government telling private individuals, authors, what have you, what they can and cannot write, telling the public what they can and cannot read. Is that, broadly speaking, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So now what if the books were digital only? Could the government ban them then? So no hard copies, no physical copies, it's just digital books. Could the government engage in book banning then under the First Amendment? No problem.
No, that's about a format of the particular book, and that really doesn't matter when it comes to whether or not government is banning a book.
Okay, what if the government made a list of authors whose books it wanted banned, and also went to all of the publishing houses in America, the government did, and said, do not publish the books by any of these authors or we will punish you? Is that a problem under the First Amendment?
My hope is that the government would not be involved in the decisions of a private company.
Good. I would hope so too, but apparently that is not the case in the United States of America today under this administration, because the hypotheticals I've just given you aren't hypotheticals at all. They've happened, and we know that they are happening. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just ruled in a case, Missouri versus Biden. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. It's going to go down, I think, as a landmark case in the worst possible way in First Amendment law, because what the Court of Appeals found is that the White House, not just the federal government, but the White House, actively coerced every major social media platform in America. Let me say that again. Every major social media platform in America to ban speech that the White House did not like. What are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about speech on the COVID-19 pandemic, speech on the 2022 congressional elections, speech related to mask mandates, speech related to vaccines. What did the White House do? Well, over a period of years, they met with, on a regular basis, the leaders of social media companies and demanded that the speech they did not like be taken down. They further demanded that these same social media companies amplify the White House's speech. Amazing. So take down all of this speech that we don't like, amplify our own speech. Unbelievable. What kind of speech are we talking about? Well, for example, not just public officials, but parents. Here's an example from my state, the state of Missouri. I'm reading you from the opinion here. One parent who posted on nixdoor.com, which is a site operated by Facebook, posted an online petition to encourage his school to remain mask optional, found that his posts were removed without notifying him, and his friends never saw them. Another parent in the same school district who objected to mask mandates for school children responded to Dr. Fauci on Twitter and promptly received a warning from Twitter that his account would be banned if he did not delete the tweets criticizing Dr. Fauci's approach to mask mandates. These objections, amazingly, this censorship was taken at the direct behest of the federal government, the direct behest of the Biden administration. Professor Knox, is this a violation of the First Amendment?
Only a judge can make that determination.
And a judge has. I'm glad you said that. Multiple judges. The district court, federal district court, said there was a direct First Amendment violation. Court of Appeals unanimously, 3-judge panel, unanimously said direct First Amendment violation. I can't think of another time in American history when the President of the United States, and I say that advisedly because the record reflects that White House officials were sending emails and communications to these companies saying that the President himself wanted the censorship. So you've got the government doing exactly what Professor Knox said is not permitted under the First Amendment, directly coercing the speech of private parties, and not just one or two authors, but parents all across the country. Unprecedented in the history of this nation. So I'm glad we're having this hearing today. I hope that we will have more like it to expose the censorship happening at the highest levels of our government. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that this opinion, this judgment by the Fifth Circuit, Missouri versus Biden, be entered into the record in full.
Without objection.
I will leave it there. I know there are other Senator Kennedys here who want to ask questions, but I just want to say for the record that this kind of censorship is un-American, it is unconstitutional, and I hope it will go down as a sad chapter in American history that we can close here and now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Kennedy.
Point out that we haven't had a markup of an immigration bill in this committee, which is the committee of jurisdiction, since the current chairman has been chairman. And even when our Democratic colleagues were in charge of both the House, the Senate, and the White House, we haven't considered any immigration bills. I think Senator Tillis joined me in a letter to you as chairman asking that we make some attempt to try to craft something that might generate bipartisan support. About 2 years ago, Senator Sinema, the senator from Arizona, and I, and also Tony Gonzalez, who represents the largest border district in the country, and Henry Cuellar, a Democrat, introduced a bipartisan, bicameral Border Solutions Act, I think we called it. And my thought was that at some point, things would get so bad that President Biden, or perhaps even our Democratic colleagues, might be prompted to actually do something instead of just talk about it. And I guess I was wrong. In the meantime, as Senator Graham points out, there have been literally millions, I think 7 million people coming across the border since President Biden was president. There have been 108,000 Americans died of drug overdoses last year alone, and we know that the fentanyl, which is taking many of our children's lives in our schools, that 71,000 of those 800,000 were synthetic opioids. We know where it comes from. We know where the precursors come from. We know where the drugs are manufactured and pressed into pills that kids take and die. And then, of course, there's the 300,000 children who've been placed with sponsors, unaccompanied children, and the Biden administration can't tell you where they are. They can't tell you whether they're going to school, whether they're getting health care. They can't tell you whether they're being trafficked for sex or forced into involuntary labor. They just can't tell you, and frankly, they don't care. Because if they did, they would want to do something about it. So I will volunteer to work with you or anybody, but it's got to be more than just talk. It's got to be action. Nobody else can do this job. We are the ones who have to do the job if it's going to get done, and so far I don't see much in the way of action. Thank you.
I would just say in response that the bill we worked on with the Gang of Eight, Senator McCain, Senator Graham, and others, was a good faith bipartisan effort, which I still think has validity to this day. And it took more than just a committee hearing to achieve. It took people of goodwill trying to work together and compromise. I'm sorry that you didn't support that bill, but I think it was a bill that we ought to return to at this time. I'm ready to do that at any point. I think we need to do so.
Mr. Chairman, I take you up on that. Bring the bill forward. Let John tell us what he doesn't like about it, how he can make it better, and let's vote. America is really in a national crisis, according to the mayor of New York City, not Lindsey Graham. This is incredibly dangerous, incredibly irresponsible. Afghanistan is now in the hands of the Taliban. The threat of terrorism against the United States is getting worse, not better. ISIS smugglers are involved in getting people into the United States. I think if you brought the Gang of Eight bill or any other bill as the base bill and have a debate on it, this committee would be well served. We could all vote, we could all amend it, and I look forward to doing that.
So let's start by having our staff take a look at the bill. What is it, 7 or 8 years now?
Count me in.
And let's update it, which I'm sure we'll have to do in some respects, and see if we can move it forward. As long as it's bipartisan and has a chance of passing in the Senate as well as the House, I think it's a good effort.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond briefly. I can't even remember when the Gang of Eight bill was on the floor. Was that 2016? 13. Oh, 10 years ago. And it didn't pass the House. I mean, I know you are proud of that product, but unfortunately, it didn't pass the House. And of course, as we all know from Schoolhouse Rock, a bill becomes a law when it passes both chambers of Congress and gets a presidential signature. So forgive me for saying this, but that bill failed to succeed. I know you're proud of it, but that was also at a different time than we're in now. And before the Biden border crisis became so dire. And I think there's a different dynamic. Certainly there's a Republican House. They're not going to take up and pass the Gang of Eight bill. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. So forgive me, but when you keep talking about the Gang of Eight bill as somehow being the gold standard, I have to